Welcome back to the Aliens and Angels podcast. Welcome back to our weekly live Q&A community chat. And today I'm pleased to introduce the subject, ET, friend or foe. Please post your questions and comments during the live chat. And you are welcome to join our Facebook group called Aliens and Angels. All of the links are featured below in the description. Check me out, subscribe to my channels, leave me a comment, like my videos, and share this content with your friends. So today's subject is, as I mentioned, ET, friend or foe. But before we get started on that topic, I'd like to speak to you a little bit about the things that have happened this weekend that I think need mentioning. So as most of you know by now, there was an assassination attempt on President Trump in the United States. I myself am Canadian, as are many of my viewers, and we've got our own political stuff to deal with here in Canada. So I'm not taking the side of any party here, but I do want to mention that my heart goes out to the friends and families of all those who were affected. I'm sure even those who were bystanders were also affected on an emotional level and even on a spiritual level. And I hope this whole big mess gets sorted out very, very soon, and that those that are recovering are able to recover quickly. And I hope that the whole process in the United States for electing a new president goes well. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. And I just wanted to mention it. I didn't want to just start the show and not say anything about it because it was a pretty shocking and huge event, regardless of what the mainstream media is saying. And it ties into what I want to talk about today, because today I want to take a look at the different accounts of experiences with ETs. And I want to delve a bit into the good, the bad, and of course the ugly, and sort of try to make sense of what looks like the contradictions in the phenomena. I'm not that I have all the answers. In fact, I don't really have any answers. I only have my own opinions and my own take on things and my own perspective and my own experiences to go by. So I have to say there are many, many, many more positive ET encounters than negative. There are only a few negative ones, and I'm going to start by talking about the secret space program. Now, I have no involvement in the secret space program. I have no experience with it, but I do know people who are involved in it. And apparently there are beings from other planets that have formed sort of a federation, and they operate in our solar system. That would be Earth's solar system. And I don't really have any experience with the goings-ons, but I do know that we all have to follow or fall under the jurisdiction of Source, which some people call God, and certain spiritual principles and certain programs that govern the holographic or the simulation reality that we're all operating within. And that includes humans as well as extraterrestrials. And in my experience with the beings I've had contact with, I've been assured that our solar system is under quarantine. Now, That makes really good sense because, first of all, the beings that I interact with are what you might consider transdimensional or interdimensional, and they're very high frequency beings. And so they're well on their path they've already reached spiritual enlightenment, and they're well on their path to becoming higher beings, even higher than what they already are. So those that are at war, supposedly, because I don't have any direct experience with this, but those that are at war within our solar system, they're governed by the same rules that we are, and they're under quarantine too. Now, when you think about it, by the time beings get to the point where they're able to venture forth from their home worlds into what I'm going to loosely call outer space, transdimensional space, interdimensional space, you would certainly think that they would have a level of understanding of how things work, not just in a so-called physical reality, but also in a spiritual reality. And therefore, if they're still warring amongst tribal groups and doing that kind of nonsense as we are here on Earth, then they're not very highly evolved at all, or they would have moved on in higher frequency to other spiritual levels. And I don't want to offend anyone that's in the secret space program, but this is just my honest take on how it all works and how it all ties in together. Now, there are also a lot of really negative abduction scenarios and accounts that we've heard about. And I'm not going to get into the details because a lot of it's very disturbing, much like the secret space program, I find quite disturbing as well, and of fairly low frequency. And so the different accounts of people that have been abducted here on Earth, what I find interesting is there is a chance that there are beings that we think of as being extraterrestrial, but they're actually what you would call crypto-terrestrials or ultra-terrestrials. They might be beings physical or interdimensional that actually are indigenous to Earth. And that would include a lot of species that are described as the stereotypical greys. They seem to be working hand in hand with the industrial military complex, and the terrible, horrible experiences that humans have gone through at the hands of these beings is often accompanied by, I would say, a human element or a human presence as well. And so, as far as the bad experiences go, there are also people like Nancy Thames, who has had contact with the Greys from early childhood. And she claims, based on her own experience, and I hope to have her on the show next month, according to her experiences, that a lot of these abductions are actually contact scenarios, which, because it's so foreign and so strange to the human people that are being involved in it, that it's perceived as being negative. Whereas if they had more contact or were able to deal with the concept psychologically, they would soon find that ultimately it's a positive experience. And that's just Nancy's take on interaction with the Greys. So she's been taken since she was a small child, had many adventures. And at first she was frightened, but once she came to understand the higher purpose of it all, which I don't claim to have a take on, but once she had a take on it, she viewed it as being very positive. So I would say that the so-called ugly experiences with ET, where we would classify ET in that case as definitely foe, more than friend, I think that it's the rarest component of the ET experiences we have with ET. And I also believe that it involves a human component to it, and it may involve off-world or on-world beings that we've just been sheltered from and haven't had exposure to, or at least have our memories to remember such. As far as the bad experiences go, again, I would say talk to someone in the secret space program, watch some YouTube videos on that to get a take on what people are experiencing. And then I also, uh, want to say that again, those bad experiences seem to be confined to our solar system. And yeah, so let's just take a look at the chat here. Mandela Miles says, I had a dream about aqua blue lights on frequency drones. They were attacking all humans by going close to where they are. I couldn't hear them, but I saw them. And then Mandela Miles says, someone in the dream said that they were, and I don't have the rest of the comment here yet. So, yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting. We do know that there is evidence that the earthly human military complex and political systems and economic systems are planning a false alien invasion. And they have technology either from I should say, creating man-made vehicles that operate the same way from reverse engineering ET craft. And they could, with the technology, which is years ahead of what we're allowed to experience, they could quite well do a false invasion, because then suddenly people would want to sign up for the WEF and the one world government and try to group together and not see ourselves as nations, but as a global community of humans fighting against a hostile force. So we know that that's in the works, and that's probably coming unless enough of us wake up to that. But let's take a look at what Don Rogers says. Don Rogers at March 4th Production says, I think you are correct. And much like humans, the beings in other densities of reality are restricted in their own realities because they also have lessons to learn on their ascension. Yeah, I would agree with you, Don, for sure. Thanks for that comment. So just hang on a sec. I just want to take a look at some of my settings here. Make sure everything is working properly. Hang on just a second. Okay, it looks like everything is working right. For some reason, I'm not streaming to X today. Something went wrong, and I don't know what. I'll have to deal with it later. So here we have Mandela. Mike says, they said, here come the frequency drones. So yeah, I do know that Dolly Saffron, who is also a lifetime experiencer with the Greys, she has not just photographic and video evidence of, but she talks about how the mother ships will actually drop drones, and that's how they keep track of everything going on here on Earth, and kind of can have eyes in all different places. And but she says they're not interactive, they're just here to observe. So, I think it's important to pay attention to dreams, but at the same time, they're often symbolic. I think that's important to remember too. Mandela Miles says, I said I'm hiding under my bed. I would never say that in real life. And Mandela Mile also says they were big, a little smaller than a helicopter. I'm guessing you're talking about the drones. Yeah, well, that actually is the size of real life drones, not just in dreams. So I don't know. I don't know what's happening, Mandela Mile. Maybe you are having transdimensional experiences while you're asleep, And as you're remembering it, is being filtered through your conscious state and your perspective. I don't know. I'm not judging. I'm just saying I don't know. But although dreams are important, they're not the whole picture. They're often highly, highly symbolic. So we've talked about the ugly and we've talked about the bad, but we haven't really talked about the good. And that is the evidence that they are actually our friends. And of course, I want to throw in a caveat at this point that I don't believe that 100% of a specific alien race is good or bad. I think there are many different races. And I think just like humans, there are good and bad and ugly in every group. And so I don't think that extraterrestrials, that we should look at them as being a homogenous group. And then sometimes what appears to be benevolent sometimes isn't. And sometimes what appears to be malevolent actually isn't. So it's really hard. And I know I do this to you a lot on my shows. It's really hard to take a stab and say, this is how it is, because we don't know. And we're simply trying to make sense of a phenomenon that's completely denied in our social reality as even being a real thing. And we don't have language for it. We don't have understanding or advanced concepts. But I'm just going to say hi to Stanton Mick. Hello, everyone. Hello, Stanton Mick. I'm so glad that you could join us. And there's Don Rogers giving a wave. And again, Mandela Miles says, I had an abduction dream, or was it a dream? It was a good experience. Well, yeah, that's exactly what I'm getting at. There are good and bad and ugly experiences. And it's, we can't just paint the whole phenomenon with a specific brush. I don't think so. So I want to get a little bit into the positive experiences that I've had and friends of mine have had. So I've mentioned already Nancy Thames, who's a lifelong um, ET contactee. She worked for many, many years with the Department of Defense in the United States. I think she's a reliable source. It is interesting to see how many parts of her experience overlap and are very similar to Dolly Safran, who was also a lifetime experiencer. A lot of similar experiences. They've spent a lot of times with the Greys. Now, I know that's a general concept in itself. I don't know how many different races of Greys there are. Dolly says that the Greys that come actually down here to Earth and, walk around or are part of taking people to the big ship, they're actually biological, but they're not actual beings. They're some kind of programmed, I don't know, drones, for another lack of a better term, that are able to come down and not be affected by our atmosphere. Now, in a couple of weeks, I'm going to do a show on toxic humanity and how we have a really bad and negative effect on ETs. So stay tuned for future episodes. But today we're basically going to just talk about within the realm of our ETs, our friends or our foes. So according to these two, Dolly and Nancy, lifetime experiencers. They're both very well respected. They're both tied into the United States military through family or through work. And they're very credible witnesses. They're very sane, normal people. And they both become somewhat friends of mine, through having them on my shows, getting to know them. And I've been on Dolly and Preston Dennett's show as well, called The Light Gate. And if you haven't done so already, please do check that out. I'm going to catch up with the chat in just a minute. I just want to finish my train of thought. And I myself have had what I would call transdimensional experiences, and the beings that I've interfaced with have definitely been our friends. And Then there's also Preston Dennett, who's a MUFON investigator, and he has interviewed thousands of witnesses. Very, very few accounts are perceived as negative. There are so many experiences where people have been healed by extraterrestrials, given their sanity, encouraged, so many positive experiences. And he's got so many books written on the subject. I really recommend that you check out his books. They're available on Amazon. That's Preston Dennett. And then just last week on the Quantum Guide Show, which is another show that I host, I had on Jimmy Blanchette. And Jimmy built this very powerful radio transmitter and antenna system where he bounces signals off the moon. And he contacted extraterrestrials. He has all kinds of evidence, visual evidence, pictures, video, everything. And they ended up showing him something that is blowing wide our concept of physics. They have showed him that the golden ratio is the main program, and everything that we perceive as physical is based on the golden ratio. So with his work, he's actually a scientist, and with his work in physics, he's determined that we can now, because we now understand the code that programs the construct, or not the construct, but the holographic or the simulation, that we can now go ahead and create med beds, interstellar travel, interstellar communication, all kinds of wonderful things, clean, zero-point technology for power, everything. And he's in the process of writing a book. So if you haven't already, subscribe to my channel and check out my videos on the Quantum Guide Show with Karen Holton. I'm also available on the audio podcasts. And do check out my interview with Jimmy Blanchette. It is groundbreaking and absolute proof and disclosure that ET is here and we're interacting with it. So there's another very, very positive experience that would definitely have me tick the box, not tick off the box, tick the box that says that ET is our friend. Okay, so let's see. Stanton Mix says, yes, at Karen Holton TV, it's important to not put human parameters on that which is not human. I agree. And Mandela Miles says, it's dark up there in space. My alien let me look out the window. Well, Mandela Mile, I don't want to freak you out, but there is a chance that was a real experience. And you might want to start journaling some of these experiences you're having. Mandela Mile says maybe it was in water or maybe it was down there. Yeah, it's hard to say, isn't it? Mandela Mile also says, my vision got perfect and eyes turned greenish blue from blue. Interesting. And Mandela Mile also says, they put 4 chips in my arm. I had a tiny scar the next day where they are. And Mandela Mile also says, I took pictures. Well, Mandela Mile, it sounds to me like you may be having extraterrestrial contact. I'm not saying you are, but that's up to you to decide whether you are or you aren't. But again, I highly recommend you start journaling your experiences and keeping track. And boldly go where few have gone before, and join those of us who have had extraterrestrial contact. And I know in my case, it's done me absolutely nothing but good. So we're coming up to the halfway point. I'm going to just quickly play a very quick promotion. It's only a couple of minutes long, and then we'll come back to the program. So get your questions ready and your comments and your thoughts, and I'd love to have you featured on today's episode of Aliens and Angels. Hi guys, break time for a short message. YouTube will not monetize me, so if you enjoy my content, and want to support my efforts, help me to cover my expenses by visiting my shop to buy yourself a beautiful orgone generator. Zendome's Orgonite are my unique brand, and they are ethically sourced, handmade, and double charged for maximum effect. They are only available through my website, www.karenholtonhealthcoach.com. Many people are finding comfort with Zendome's orgone generators, commonly called Orgonite. They are a simple compound which balance ambient energy by converting negative energy and EMF into positive healing energy with many easily confirmed health benefits. They are a simple compound with alchemic and energetic properties. These devices function as self-driven, continuously operating, highly efficient, negative to positive energy transmutation factories. They help diminish the harmful effects of electromagnetic frequency radiation by attracting and converting negative energies, retuning them into new and more healthful sound and light wave patterns. And they help to purify the atmosphere and accelerate plant growth. They also help stimulate positive mood and are a natural remedy for poor sleep patterns. When Orgonite is within range of any corded or wireless electronic device, it will efficiently and continuously transform that energy into orgone as it is being transmitted. This essentially creates orgone energy transmitters out of any and all emitters of harmful negative energy. You can use these devices for focusing the mind, healing, meditation, and for spiritual growth. Zendome's Orgonite are my unique brand of orgone generators, and they are only available through my website. Don't be fooled by imitations. Check out my website to see my latest selection at www.karenholtonhealthcoach.com. That's KarenHolton healthcoach.com. Check them out today. Now, let's get back to the show. I'm back. Thank you for your patience. I'm going to check the comments here. Let's see, where did we leave off? Mandela Mile has some chips in their arm, and they had some scars and took some pictures. And Mandela Mile says, doctors won't take them out for one reason or another. They are used to them now, and they don't hurt at all. And they moved a little under the bones and the veins, and wearing gold helps. I think that's why they hide. Interesting about gold, when I wear gold, I also have very positive, beneficial health effects, and I definitely feel calmer. So it's interesting that you mentioned that. So yeah, good luck with those implants, and if they ever do bother you, let me know. And I do have an alien implant remedy available on my website. But many people, they choose to keep their implants because it allows them, to stay in closer contact generally. And those people have generally had positive contact, and they don't want to have them removed. And I don't blame them. So Don Rogers at March 4th Production says, Mandela Mile, I can put you in contact with Karen Wilkinson. She's a stolen seed, evil harvest, if you want to speak to her about your experiences. And Stanton Mix says, from what I understand, what we call positive ETs adhere to very ethical guidelines concerning contact with us, while what we call negatives don't. Yeah, I would. Really good comment there, Stanton Mick. I agree. You see, we're all here in this reality, holographic reality. I definitely subscribe to simulation theory. And of course, we have real life consequences, and it feels real. I'm not saying that it's not real, but the way it operates, we're all here for soul evolution. And why would it be any different for extraterrestrials. So they're learning and they're on a path just like we are. And some of them are probably assholes, just like some of us are. There's probably rogue groups, just like we have black operations that go rogue. And I don't think we can paint them all with the same brush. I think that we just have to take each experience and weigh it according to, how we've experienced it. And I also think that we need to, um, trust each other and each other's perceptions. So, I try to give everybody the benefit of the doubt. I mean, my story is completely fantastical. Why would anyone want to believe me? Um, you know, uh, so I want to give the same kind of respect to other people. Well, I don't think I said that right. What I meant was, I know what I experienced was real, and what other people are telling me they've experienced is probably real too. And since I can't tell the difference, and I'm not going to argue and debunk, because to me, I don't know. I think fearful people have to debunk because they just can't accept it. And unfortunately, a lot of the nuts and bolts um, um, researchers, they haven't had the spiritual experiences, so it's not real to them. And let's face it, if I hadn't had my experience, it wouldn't be real to me either. So, that's how I see it. Don Rogers at March 4th Production says her remedy does work, in my opinion. Yeah, I sent an alien implant remedy kit to Don Rogers because of his experiences with the super space program, and I wanted him to have that protection. So what it does is, because it's frequency based, it's use of essential oils, positive affirmations, orgone generators, and they produce an overall sort of frequency effect so that your body can naturally expel anything that's not good for it. If something is good for you and raising your frequency, it wouldn't get rid of it. It just gets rid of negative attachments, because you see, implants can happen on an etheric level, they can happen in our DNA. They can happen, more physically, like under the skin. There's a lot of different kinds from a lot of different sources. That, again, we'll have to do that topic for another episode because it's huge and the rabbit hole goes down really deep. Mandela Miles says, it's strange because anything foreign, usually my body rejects. Yeah, that is the natural way. But some of these implants, they have, I would say, disruptive technologies so that our bodies don't repel them. And yeah, there's a lot going on. Mandela Mile also says, thanks, Don. And then Don Rogers at March 4th Production says, I get it, Karen. I have PTSD over something that doesn't happen for a few hundred years. Well, that's absolutely true, Don. You see, what a lot of people don't understand is that a lot of our interdimensional and transdimensional experiences are happening outside of time and space. So they're happening outside of the simulation or the holographic universe that we perceive as our reality. And for those of you who don't understand how that would work, do some research into simulation theory and do some research into the Monroe Institute and the Gateway Project, which is very well documented and supported scientifically. There are ways through meditation and altered um, states of consciousness that we can click out of this reality, and then we find ourselves in interdimensional or transdimensional spaces, and their time and space is very, very different. That's how you're able to go to different worlds without having the passage of time. You're not hindered by the requirements or restrictions of time and or space. It's quite something. That's how you're able to have time dilation. And I also wanted to mention, although I don't condone this or condemn it, those who use psychedelics are also able to click out of the simulation, and they often experience a time dilation as well. Let's see. Mandela Miles says also being O does not help. So I'm assuming you're talking about your blood type O. And I would agree. I'm blood type O, and I have these amazing transdimensional experiences. I think other blood types can have it, but there just seems to be something about the type O's that seem to have an easier time. Another thing is people who are what we would call neurodivergent, people who are on the autism spectrum. They might be very high functioning, but they also have a much easier time with transdimensional travel. And nowadays, I would say the majority of us are to some degree neurodivergent. Being a normie is kind of in the minority now. Stanton Mix says, the other issue is there are many, many species. We can't even begin to imagine how many. I've been to an extra dimensional conference where it was just learning about the different types of ET or IDs. Now, I want to tell you, Stanton, Mick, and everyone else, the reason I'm reading this out is because this is going to go out on all the audio podcasts. And I want those that are listeners as well as the viewers to be able to get a sense of what your comments are so they can, get a greater understanding of the whole conversation instead of just hearing me answer. So I would agree with you. And you know what's interesting, Stanton Mick? I too have been to these interdimensional conferences. We are, in effect, exopolitical ambassadors. Now, it doesn't mean like for that I represent Earth, I don't, but I've been told that there are millions of us who travel. Some don't remember, some think they're dreaming, some aren't ready to accept it. And we go to these places and we give information and we share our experiences and our perceptions so that other beings could get a sense of what we're about. There are many beings that think of us as just being like ants on an anthill. You can sit out in the backyard and you notice the ants, but you don't really pay attention to their politics or their feelings or, their quality of life because they're just ants. And so there are a lot of beings that also, kind of perceive us as being that. But once they understand that we are sentient, that we are awakening, that we do care, most of us anyway, about ascension. And ascension is not is not a religious thing; it's a spiritual thing because science and spirituality are very much the same thing once we get into higher frequency understanding of reality. So, yeah, and I have met there too. I didn't have any experiences like with grays or reptilians or Arcturians or Pleiadians or anything like that. But it was while I was away at one of these interdimensional conferences that I didn't meet the beings, but it was kind of like we were sitting in a circle, a really big circle. And in the center, there was holographic projections. And in that way, I got to see some of these beings. And I was really surprised because the way they're represented, like the reptilians, is just being kind of stinky, big, scaly, ugly things. And, and some of the beings look humanoid, look more like us, but they wear these tight jumpsuits. But when I was introduced to them through the council, I was really surprised at how sensitive and regal and intelligent these beings were. And it really kind of surprised me because that component of the description seems to be missing from the alt media. And of course, it's missing from mainstream media. They don't even want to admit that this is a real thing. Let's see. Stanton Mix says, Karen Holton, that's great to hear. Yes, it was very cool. I remember thinking there are as many species of ET as there are varieties of fish in the sea. Oh, totally. Totally. As many as quite literally how many stars there are in heaven. It's mind-boggling. And then as we go through the different frequencies, lower frequency beings are more like three-dimensional density like us. Higher frequency beings, you get into ETs who maybe don't no longer need to be so physical. And there's a sort of a fine line between where the angelic realms start and where the ET realms stop. And so maybe there's some overlap there. And remember, our particular star system and where we are here in our solar system, we're billions and billions of years behind some of these other star systems that promote life and have humanoid beings. And so, they've been there, done that, all of it. And they're even to the point where they've raised their frequency and their spiritual potential to the point where, they're quite different than us, a lot less physical, in my opinion. I'm not trying to come across as an expert. I'm just trying to give you my take on it. Mandela Miles says, mine were pure white with no clothes. Well, that's quite possible too. I have seen many different skin tones of extraterrestrials. Aboard the big ship, I met many, many different beings that were all shades of brown, from light to very dark. Some were very pale, like myself. Some had an orange kind of skin tone, and some had even kind of blue skin tone. And one species, or I should say race, we're all the same species. This is interesting. They had the ability to cloak themselves the way octopus and little lizards can here on Earth. So you take some of these octopus, and if whatever surface they're on, their body takes on the same texture, appearance of the texture and the colors. And the same was true for this race of beings. It was very interesting. I was never like shocked because they were blended into the background. This particular race tend to wear very colorful clothing, and then their skin picks up the imprint of the clothing, but you can clearly see that they're beings walking around and fully functioning like us. But I thought that was the most interesting difference in what I would call skin tone. But the rest of us, yeah, we come in all kinds of shapes and sizes and everything. It's very interesting. Let's take a look at Don Rogers at March 4th Productions says, the reptilians I've interacted with are orangish brown and skin much like a dolphin, soft yet rubbery. Interesting. See, we don't normally get that much detail from people. They talk about the reptilians and they're eating people, or they're doing this or they're doing that. There's the scary stories. There's some not so scary stories. I mean, even the logo I have behind me here is sort of a reptilian type being, but I just put it up there because I thought it was a really cool picture where it showed obviously who an extraterrestrial who has obviously compassion for this little being. Hang on a second. There, I had some background noise I had to take care of, so it's all good now. So it's mind-bogglingly complex. And that was another reason why I started this show, was because I wanted um, to discuss all the different aspects of aliens and even angels, and start a community chat where we could share, our thoughts, our experiences, build some community. And that reminds me, I want to just bring up a couple of announcements. One announcement is in the future, I keep saying this, but I'm waiting for us to build up more of a community in the chat for this show, because I want to have a contest and I'm going to have a free giveaway. So here is one of my orgone generators, and you can see it's filled with different colored crystals. It's got jasper, carnelian, yellow aventurine, green aventurine, turquoise, lapis lazuli, and amethyst. And then there's a clear, a AAA clear quartz crystal point in the top. There's copper. It's got the flower of life on the front. So this is just an example of one of my orgone generators, as you learned about them from the promotion video today. And I'm also going to, so I'm going to do a free giveaway. I'm going to give away some orgone generators. I'm going to give away some stickers. And I got another kind here for my other show, for the Quantum Guide show, and some other cool stuff, including some handicrafts from Canadian Spinja. And we're going to put that together and have a contest. And so I'm asking everybody to please join the Aliens and Angels group that's on Facebook and come and participate in the live chat. And then when we get a few more people showing up, I'm going to do the contest, and then the winner, I'll ship them all the cool stuff, and I'm pretty excited about that. And Stanton Mick says the Orgone Pyramid is beautiful. Thank you. And Mandela Mile also said beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, I put a lot of care and love into them, and I design them, and a friend of mine makes them for me. And I sell them on my website, and that helps to pay for some of my expenses, because it's actually, quite expensive to run a website, to have a YouTube channel, to make videos, for streaming software, video editing software. It just seems to be no end to it. And so I offer amazing products to help offset the costs of my doing my shows. So yeah, so we got the contest coming up. And the other thing I want to tell you before I forget, we're not quite finished yet, but before I forget, July 21st, next Sunday, I'm having Preston Dennett and Dolly Safran on to participate in the conversation with all of you. And I just love them so much. They become good friends of mine. And let's see. Don Rogers at March 4th Production says, Mandela, look me up on Facebook. I'll give you that email. I gotta sneeze. Maybe not. Thought I had to sneeze. Yeah, so anyway, so please do come back next week for Preston Dennett. He's very, very well-known author, and he wrote a book called Symmetry, and it features Dolly Safran's lifelong experiences as a contactee. And she's very, very knowledgeable. So anything you want to know about the Greys, about their spaceships, about their probes, about their anything to do with them, she's very knowledgeable, very user-friendly, and bring your questions and your comments, invite your friends, and come support the show next week and meet them. And I think you'll get a lot out of the show, and I can't wait. So I wanted to let you know about that. That's coming up next week. And then I may as well finish the announcements before we finish the show. And then the last thing I want to tell everybody is we're having another meetup here in central Alberta, Canada. We had one already, which is how I got to meet Don Rogers and Canadian Spinja. And the next one we're going to have in late August. So we'll keep you posted in case you're in the area and you want to come. That would be great. And if not, maybe next year. We're growing all the time, and it should be a good time. So let's get back to the conversation. So we've talked about ET, friend or foe. And in my opinion, and based on my experiences, I think overall ET is our friends. And as was alluded earlier by Stanton Mick, they have protocols they follow, which also involve a certain amount of non-interference. So generally, there is the CE5 program and the protocols that Dr. Stephen Greer initiated, which is human-initiated contact. If we initiate contact, often we get a response. And now we have the CE6 contact protocols that have been designed by Jimmy Blanchett, and that's using communication devices. Although he says you can communicate with a CB radio, with a cell phone, with a ham radio. You can communicate through telepathy, meditation. So really, there's quite a bit of overlap between CE5 and CE6. Now, when we initiate contact, or when we are ready to handle positive contact, which means a number of things, then, contact is possible. But I don't think it's ET is running around crossing our internal and external and spiritual boundaries, harassing humans, and abusing us. I think those particular experiences are tied into crypto-terrestrials and also human-initiated stuff. I mean, really, a lot of people are afraid of how ET would treat us, but I gotta say, guys, the way humans treat other humans is so horrible and so disturbing. And that's another thing I want to say. In my own experiences with ET, many of them know nothing about Earth, know nothing about our history, our culture, anything about us. And these beings are so beautiful in their disposition and spiritual, they'd have nightmares if they knew the goings on here on Earth. We got a long way to go in our development before we as a collective community are ready to have proper contact with extraterrestrials. And in Star Trek, they had to get to the point where they had warp speed before they were able to make contact. Well, with us, it's not warp speed. With us, it's our own development, where we become kind to each other. We put away our warring ways, our tribalism, our aggression, our insecurities, and certainly somehow we got to breed out of us the psychopathy that's infected, a lot of the human systems here on Earth. Okay, I'm going to be quiet for a minute and check out what you guys are saying in the chat here. Okay, hi, Not Too Haunted. Hello, everyone. My son and I are paranormal investigators and saw your live. Thought we'd stop in and say hi. Hi, so glad you could join us. If you missed the beginning of the show, I highly recommend that you watch the replay, because we've gotten into the good, the bad, and the ugly when it comes to ETs. And I think you would definitely find it interesting. But thank you so much for joining us. Lovely to have you. And let's see, we got here, Not Too Haunted also said lots of texts in the Bible might suggest ETs, like Ezekiel following a moving star to Bethlehem and Moses being taken by angels to the sky. Oh, I totally agree with you. In fact, I'm a big fan of Paul Anthony Wallace, and I'm a big fan of Billy Carson, and they both get into how certain parts of the Bible are actually talking about ET beings who've passed themselves off as gods, because a lot of their behavior and their directives is not very godlike. And some of it, like in the case of oh geez, I can't remember, but some of the accounts in the ancient scriptures are also basically echoed or originated back in the old cuneiform writings, and there was even some positive ET contact then. So Not Too Haunted also says, I was raised Christian, but definitely experienced enough that has me open-minded. Yeah, I think it's best to be open-minded, because um, we're taught by the so-called experts, the external experts around us in the beginning. We're taught by the doctors and the clergy and the politicians. But eventually, I think we surpass that, and it's time to go inside. And that's where we really fine tune what's real for us and how everything works. And yeah. Don Rogers at March 4th Production says, hey, Natu, glad you joined us. Welcome. You are in the right place. And Natu Haunted says, Don, thank you. Yeah, I'm reading all the comments that I'm putting up on the screen because this is also going to be streamed out to all the audio platforms. And I want everybody who's listening to be able to get the gist of the whole conversation and not just hear my side of it. Oh, Canadian Spinja, hi. There she is. Just wanted to say hi, hook in hand. Canadian Spinja does all kinds of handcrafted work like crocheting and knitting and spinning wools and all kinds of things. And she puts positive, high frequency vibration into everything she does. So it's kind of like ancient ways of doing things with adding a new spiritual component to it. And she's reviving a lot of the arts that have been lost through Industrial Revolution and modern manufacturing. Natu Haunted says, but I do believe in a spirit realm. I've experienced a few apparitions that were very eye-opening. Oh yeah, I totally agree with you. There's a lot going on. And she, Natu Haunted also says, my son and I love going to haunted locations. Yeah, it's really interesting. Now, I've never really perceived ghosts, but I can go to old abandoned sites and I definitely pick up energy signatures. Like, for instance, there is a small hospital that closed down near where I live. And I used to walk through there with a friend of mine, and we could pick up the feelings of people who were in that hospital. It was very, very, very interesting. So we've kind of come to the end of the show for today. So again, please join me next week, same time, same place, and I will bring along Preston Dennett and Dolly Saffron. Bring your questions and your comments, and we'll have a lovely visit. And I hope you all have a great summer and that things go really, really well for you. And that's about it for Aliens and Angels, ET, friend or foe. Thank you so much for joining me, and we'll see you next week. Thank you for joining me for the Aliens and Angels podcast. Become the change that you wish to see in the world. Subscribe to my YouTube and other channels at Karen Holton TV. Click the like button, leave me a comment, and share this podcast with your friends. Check out my website at www.karenholtonhealthcoach.com to see my free resources and amazing products and services. All the links will be in the description below. As part of the Forbidden Knowledge Network, you will also find the Quantum Guide Show with Karen Holton on all audio platforms. A very special thank you to Andy Gambino and Anthony Essempler from the Unidentified S4 channel for creating the beautiful introduction for this podcast. Until next time, keep up the good work.